and today for our supply chain project, we are reviewing the Eximchain, which is a new company, a startup company that is merging the supply chain with the blockchain technology. So before I start, I'm going to go over the agenda. First of all, we're going to go over some quick background of the blockchain. I'm going to try to do the impossible and explain the blockchain technology as quick as possible in one slide or so. Then we're going to give a background on supply chain finance. Then we'll go to the problem statements in terms of the issue of the SCFs, which will be explained later, the issues with SMEs, and the solutions, which is proposed by Eximchain. And finally, we'll go about examples of the solutions. Now, before I start presenting, this is a very complex project. A lot of details were presented in the white paper of the project. And we did not go into the blockchain aspect of the technology. We tried to stick to the supply chain aspect of the technology, to stick to our course curriculum. And we're also like to make it clear that this is as per our understanding of the complexity of the white paper, basically. So if there are any mistakes or misinterpretations, we'd like to apologize for that in advance. So I'll start ahead and I'll try to explain the blockchain technology in one slide. It's a very basic slide. This takes a lot of time to explain, but I'm just going to go over it really quickly so that we can understand the advantages of the blockchain when it's involved with today's projects. I've been involved with blockchain projects and reviewing them for the past year or so, and working with them and investing in them. And I'm personally invested in Eximchain as a project. And I'm just going to go really quickly to explain what the blockchain is. So first of all, in 2009, someone with the name of Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper. Now that white paper was 7 pages, and it explained what is today known as the blockchain. And it was the beginning of what we know today as Bitcoin, which is the first cryptocurrency that was introduced. Now all of you heard about the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin buzz and the prices and the trading and everything that's happening, especially in the past couple of months when it hit around $20,000 per Bitcoin, where previously people were buying pizzas with 1 Bitcoin. So things are changing really quickly and dramatically, and this is why this is such an exciting technology, because of the huge demand that's surrounding it. So that was the birth of Bitcoin, and ever since then, things started evolving more. What happened is, people now today are confusing Bitcoin with blockchain. Now, they are two different things. Bitcoin is just one application of the blockchain. Blockchain as a technology provides so many more applications. It simply is, think of it as a smart ledger. Basically, you can have smart contracts where you can exchange digital assets between two parties in a secure manner. Now, what makes this special is that previously, for example, if you want to send money to, if X wanted to send money to Y, for example, you would have to go through a bank, and then the bank is the only identity that is going to confirm that transfer of money, which is the asset that we're talking about. Now today on the blockchain technology, the whole concept is decentralization. What happens is, party A, for example, creates a complex mathematical equation in the computer, and the party A's computer. And that complex mathematical equation, there are people that we call miners. These miners will come and they will try to solve that mathematical equation. The first miner to solve the mathematical equation will get the transaction fees. And all the other miners on the network, which are thousands, have to confirm the same answer of the same equation. And when that happens, basically, nobody can fraud anyone else, because you have thousands of computers all solving one simple complex math equation, and all of them need to have the same answer for the operation to be completed. So for that party B to receive the money. So you cannot, if you want to hack the blockchain technology, you would literally need to hack thousands of computers at the same instant of time and put the same fake results for that mathematical equation in all the computers in order for you to hack the system, which is practically impossible in today's computing power. And that's where the security of the blockchain comes in. Now what also makes it special is that it's a public network. So what happens is everybody can see what everybody has, because the data is available to everyone on the blockchain. And that's where another aspect comes in. Now smart contracts took this to a bit of another level. I'm talking now about money, but something came up called by a guy called Vitalik, a Russian genius, young genius. He came in and he created Ethereum network. Now the Ethereum network is basically smart contracts to exchange digital assets. Now these assets do not have to be currencies. They can be contracts, they can be data, they can be, for example, renting data or ownership of property or anything of that sort. And today we're starting to see many more applications to the blockchain because of that huge step from Bitcoin to Ethereum smart contracts. And a lot of applications are already happening. For example, there's a project called The Key in China that is used for facial recognition and identity. We have projects with artificial intelligence. We have projects such as Navi Address that is basically mapping over current mapping systems over the blockchain. Now what this gives you is an extreme high layer of security with huge potential. Now the amazing thing about all of this is that even with all the applications that are happening today, nobody really knows how big this can go. This is basically the early days of the internet with a new technology. And that's why everybody is excited about it. Because the limitations at the moment, nobody really knows them. We just know the basic abilities of the technology, and everybody's trying to expand upon that. And Bitcoin today might not be the same currency that's going to be used in 20 years or 10 years. It could be the MySpace of social media. Nobody really knows anything. We're still waiting for the Facebook to come up or for the Twitter to come up. And this is just a simple analogy that I'm trying to make between the blockchain technology and the internet, basically, is that the possibilities right now are unlimited. Now we're going to start talking about Eximchain. That's the second part of the presentation, and my colleague Jihad will take over for a bit.
Alright, first of all, I would like to let you know that Eximchain is actually a solution applied for supply chain finance. Basically, it's their own future solution of the future of supply chain. But we need to understand first what is supply chain finance. So let's go over some of the basics. Supply chain management. We know that supply chain management is basically the alignment of goals to reach a certain supply chain surplus, right? And for that to happen, you must have a good flow and a good management of products, information, and funds, right? Now, the issue behind this is that, remember the game we played last week? That beer game, it's called a beer game. What were we usually focusing on? We didn't even think about funding. We didn't even think about finance. We were just thinking of inventory. So that's the problem with supply chain, in that it's still traditional. It just focuses on the physical aspect. Products. I want products from here. I want products from here. Inventory this, inventory that. Yes. So the issue is that there is, obviously you've heard of the big global decline of economy, and also you realize that businesses are not growing as fast. There is a slow growth in businesses, and this is why there is an urge to be able to include the flow of finance into a supply chain to further improve its business. So this is where supply chain finance comes in. Okay, so basically supply chain finance is where the financer becomes involved with the supply chain operations. So it enables them to further fund their operations. And how they do this is they are able to create optimal cash flow. This is basically the point where buyers are allowed to pay their suppliers late, but are also given the option of paying it early. And this basically, in a global supply chain where you have various buyers from different locations and various suppliers from different locations, there is a need to properly utilize the hidden working capital. And that's what basically supply chain does, is it helps buyers optimize on working capital and for suppliers to generate additional cash flow by allowing this certain communication on the delay, the acceptable delay on payment. And I was going to say something, I can't remember. Yeah, actually I think that's it, yeah. Alright, so although supply chain finance is actually a very interesting solution, there are some issues, okay? First of all, SMEs. SMEs are always the bullied ones. Basically, SME stands for small to medium enterprises. So they're not, in a competitive stance, they're not as strong as large companies. Now, this is an issue because if you think of it, based on a study, that 60% of employment and 40% of the GDP is generated just by SMEs themselves, and this is also in developing markets. So, if you think about it, there is a huge financing gap for SMEs of around $3 trillion. That is staggering. And not also to mention that SEF is quite complex, so it's not very easy to implement onto an existing workflow. And this is why, out of the 20 billion potential revenue for SCF, only 2 billion until now has been captured. So we know that SCF could be an issue because it's complex, and also that it is not readily available to SMEs because SCF can be a costly process. But there are also global implementations as well, because in a global supply chain, everything is affected by external factors such as taxes, tariffs, infrastructure, political factors, and also internal factors such as inventory decisions. So this complexity, coupled by SCF's complex nature, is going to have some sort of challenge for global supply chains. Also, you should know that as you get bigger, you have more different participants in your supply chain. And all these participants have their own goals for profit maximization. So if the goals are really not aligned, SCF might not even work. Hence the need for proper supply chain management. Now we're going to go about SMEs in general because I fear that it's not really mentioned. Now the issue with SMEs is, like I said, they are not as financially capable as large companies. So let's talk about supply chain visibility. Supply chain visibility requires investment, which for an SME, they do not have the budget compared to large companies to have that supply chain visibility to maintain a competitive edge. Also, you should know that for SMEs to maintain supplier relationships with others, it can be a challenge unless the supplier itself is also an SME. Because if I am a small business trying to make a deal with a very big, very strong, very powerful supplier, I don't have leverage. So I'll just be bullied and I'm not going to manage much. So it's also hard for SMEs to maintain supplier relationships and basically keeping the pace with technology, such as SCF solutions. Some SCF solutions require innovative technologies, right? Again, budget. SMEs always promise with the budget. This is their cause of worry because they have to make sure that they maintain their budget while enabling their inventory to respond with customer requests. So they have this sort of two-edged battle that they're stuck in. So, what is Eximchain? Basically, Eximchain is a Bitcoin technology solution where you merge the supply chain with the blockchain, right? So what it does is, first thing I'd like to add is that it's a secure and private network, and also that it's SDK, which is software development kit. Yeah. It is very easy to implement onto existing workflows, supply chain flows. So how does this work is that it can also be implemented for SMEs because it's simple. If it's simple, it's probably cheap, right? So we're going to talk about how it does this. So it usually uses smart contracts, like my colleague discussed, smart contracts on a permission Ethereum network. Okay. Now let's try to understand this. So how it works is you are in this secure network and you're using something called a multi-party dynamic contracting. Basically, what it means is that no participants are able to generate their own profit if it does not completely optimize with the other supply chain participants. So how it works is that the optimization engine of Eximchain will take all the requirements of all the participants into a black box. Now in this black box, it creates the most optimal solution for everyone to benefit. So if you have this optimized solution, it reaches something called Nash equilibrium. In this Nash equilibrium, everyone gains, everyone wins. But if you try to deviate from it, it won't work. That's the whole point and the beauty of such a secure network. And it's also private, so there is no breach of sensitive data. Also, the good thing about it, again, in this network, is it allows for it allows for contracting, simple contracting between buyers and suppliers. Now, you should know that buyers have their own goals and objectives, and suppliers have their own goals. Buyers generally, they want to maintain a certain inventory to respond to customers. So sometimes they need their inventory big, sometimes they need it small. But the supplier's goal is to sell in bulk. They want to sell in bulk. They want to generate profit as well. However, they want it in flexible dates. To be responsive, your flexible dates have to be really small. Okay? So what this does is, it creates a certain sort of network for them to communicate, because for a supplier and a buyer to reach a consensus, there has to be an unbiased decision maker. And for that to happen, there needs to be a huge amount of trust. Eximchain is able to do that. Okay? Now, oh yeah, and it also gives finances visibility. Remember I told you that SCF, supply chain finance, traditionally, all these finances were from a bank. Now for the bank to be able to finance any operations, they need to see the history, contract history, to see whether it's secure or not. So they are also able to plan out the uncertainties, because they'll also lose. Now, the interesting thing about Eximchain is it does not just stick to traditional forms of financing such as banks. It also allows other parties to be involved. I could be a financer, he could be a financer, but to know this, we need to have some sort of visibility, and that is the beauty of Eximchain. It provides that visibility, let's say visibility, so that you are able to adjust your planning to finance them and also gain something in return, with a bonus that they receive finance from almost any financiers who are interested. Now, if we're talking about the global supply chain, you should know that every day it could be a varied form of strategy, right? And that's why these secured smart contracts could be customizable. Now, I just mentioned that Nash equilibrium, you can't deviate, right? But what it does is it has the it has the smart contract, and you are allowed to customize your contracts in a form that it allows for everyone still to benefit. So it's still, you can customize it to suit the global need, but at the same time, it's not just for your own personal benefit. Everyone else benefits from it. Now, for more explained details for the solutions, my colleague will elaborate.
So now I'm just going to go over a couple of examples that are mentioned in the okay? A couple of examples that are mentioned on the white paper about the possibilities that we could have with Eximchain. Now, before I go into any of this, a point that my colleague made earlier is that you try to reach a stage where everybody can benefit from the supply chain. And this is what we're going to see in a bit. And this is, I just want to highlight that this is the main point that our book addresses, is that we try to increase the profitability for the whole supply chain and not for a single individual in the supply chain. And when that happens, that's when you have the maximum efficiency in the supply chain. So I'm just going to go over a couple of examples. The first example is on credit rate arbitration. So this is just a quick example where you have a supplier who takes a loan from the bank to prepare his materials, and then you have a buyer who's supposed to pay the supplier in a certain amount of time. Now the starting point is the same. At this point, the supplier takes a loan from the bank, and there are basically two different situations. Situation A is that the supplier gets the money from the buyer after 96 days, and situation 2 is that supplier gets the money from the buyer after 30 days. Now, in both situations, the loan has to be paid to the bank after 30 days. So after 30 days, the supplier needs to pay some money. If the two parties agree that that the buyer will pay the money in 96 days, then the approximate break-even point is at $21. And if it's at 30 days, then the savings for the supplier, you will have $2,000. The simple explanation is, if I am a supplier that I need to pay a bank in 30 days, if I get the money from my buyer in 30 days, then I can pay my bank immediately from the capital of the buyer. If I'm a supplier who's going to get the money in 96 days, it means after 30 days I'm going to use my own money to pay the bank, and I'm still going to have to wait for a certain period of time to get my money back from the buyer. And obviously in the second case, I will not save as much money. Now the beauty of this thing is that now both parties are aware of the circumstances of the two situations that are possible. And once the buyer knows that, hi supplier, if I pay you in 30 days, you're making this much more money. So now you have some leverage over the supplier to at least get a discount on the products at the beginning. This way you're trying to maximize the profit for both. In this case, for example, if you do this and the buyer manages to get that certain discount on the initial cost of the products, it means A, the loan will be smaller for the loan will be paid immediately by the supplier back at the bank, and B, this guy gets a smaller basically initial cost on his products. And this is how you try to maximize the profit for both.